Yeah, hi, warm welcome also from my side. It's a pleasure to join my UK colleagues for the Industry 4.0 Summit here. And as mentioned, I'm rather one of those techie guys, yeah, but for today, I'm not supposed to provide you with all the nice technology. For that purpose, we brought along and stuffed our booth full of IoT-ready drive and control technology. We can showcase to you what connected hydraulics means, what active assembly and mounting technologies mean, how connected automation may look like in the future. And we also will have a talk tomorrow by my colleague Mike Lomax in the Open Technology Forum to present the techie approach. For me, I was asked to give you some insights on our experience we had the last few years, because whenever you come to that kind of conference or are in customer negotiations, you always come down to the point that that fuzzy term Industry 4.0 in the end, so how to approach that. So everybody is in the end looking for a cooking recipe, right? Like give me the 1, 2, 3 step approach and then I can check mark. That would be the ideal case. But since the topic is fuzzy, like if I'm asked for the in a nutshell definition, I'm always referring to take the technology you find in the internet and take all the concepts and try to transfer them to the industrial domain. And what you end up with is a fuzzy field of innovation you have to explore. And so that's why last year a colleague of mine and we started to do some research looking for that cooking recipe. And we ended up with putting together a white paper that serves as kind of our receipt book, featuring our insights, but also the insights we found at other partners, competitors, customers. And I would like to present you some of the hypotheses we came up with and also support them with 2 case studies I brought along. So take them as an inspiration and take them as topics we might want to speak about later on. So first of all, when we speak about a cooking recipe and you plan to do cooking, the first thing you have to look for are, of course, the sources. So you go to the marketplace. And in case of IoT innovation, this is about thinking what is changing with regard to the innovation search fields, right? And to our experience and what we learned is when you take into account the tremendous degrees of freedom you have when it comes to the IoT. We heard a lot starting from VR over additive manufacturing to the whole field of big data and condition monitoring. You have a vast field of technology, and that you do not get lost in that. It's always important to take a use case driven approach. To our experience, that works very well, that you always start with a user pain point and derive all the requirements and also the business case from that point, because that keeps you on track also during the selection of technology. So first search field, take a closer look at your customers, your colleagues, pain points and use cases, and try to come up with new solutions, because this is what it's all about, right? To take IoT technologies and to evaluate their potentials in comparison to the technologies we found before. The second search field that is very interesting to our perspective is, and this is especially valid for me as a typical German engineer. So as German engineers, we are very focused on that box of product innovation. So in a narrow sense, that you take the existing technology and you try to improve it. But when you take a look on the innovations we saw the last few years, and when you take a look in all the unicorns that were mentioned earlier, it's not so much to just stay in the narrow focus of your product, your technological building block. You should also think out of the box of the product, but the whole business model around the product. Perhaps it's not so much about getting the most sophisticated VR technology or latest condition monitoring algorithm, but it's more about innovating the business processes with which you bring that to the customer, make your customers happy. So, of course, that also has a huge impact on your innovation teams, right? So that we'll come to that later. And last but not least, also a good recommendation is to broaden your scope. What is of special interest when we think about our traditional roles in supply chains, it also applies to us as Bosch Rexroth, as a typical supplier of drive and control technology. So typically we open our toolbox to our customers and they pick from the technologies they find in our portfolio. So that's the typical value proposition. But of course, it's a very interesting field of innovation to take a look what happens when you broaden your scope, when you do not only look how do I make the most perfect proportional valve in the world or the most perfect axis, but take a look on the whole machine and the whole value stream. And whenever you do brainstormings on that, taking the whole system into account, that unlocks also new search fields. And so those are the three fields of sources I would recommend when you go to the topic and want to drive IoT innovation. Take a look at those three aspects, what those could mean for you. I also brought along a little case study from one of our plants, a plant in Hamburg, to illustrate that, how such a use case driven approach look like, and also the others can be explained. So without going into the details that can be observed, we brought it along as one exhibit at our booth. This is one use case we found at the Bosch plant in Hamburg. They had test bench facilities without any connectivity and asked themselves the question, since they are narrow paths in their value stream, how they could enhance availability and in the end improve their overall equipment efficiency by applying IoT technologies. So their use case was, so how can I make the production data transparent? As we see, it does not necessarily need highly sophisticated technology, but they started with the IoT gateway as one of the building blocks we offer to provide machine connectivity, and they combined it with the production performance manager as a condition monitoring tool. And what they ended up with is making their production data transparent and solving their use cases, what provides them with kind of impressive numbers in between the first 2 years, that they were not only able to reduce their maintenance costs, but also improve their testing processes and thereby have a holistic impact on their value stream. Why did I bring along that case study? On the one hand, hopefully to support that when picking from the waste portfolio of technologies, always stay focused on your benefit. And on the other hand, also a side effect that is a very nice display on what we call dual strategy at Bosch, that we always regard ourselves as operators and providers of technology. So me being part of the sales organization of Bosch, of course, I am always looking for what can I do the best for our customers, what can we offer with regard to the topic. But being short, on the other hand, there are all the Bosch plants, and we are a producing company that ask themselves, what does the fourth industrial revolution mean for us as a company? And the win-win situation is that you can assume that all the technology we offer to the outside market also pass the internal reality check. But it also is a very nice synergy with exchanging requirements and use cases. And this is also a pattern you might want to adapt for yourself, that you always keep in mind. On the one hand, it's thinking about the benefit you can offer to your outside customers, but on the other hand is also asking yourself, what impact has the digital revolution for yourself, right? So let's take that further. When we take a closer look for the success factors, then the first thing one should keep in mind when putting all things together on the table is to accelerate in the way on how you do innovation. Since the technology is changing fast, you should also find your way on how you could accelerate the way of exploring and evaluating its potentials. The second thing we found when we spoke not only with our colleagues but with our partners is what we call here play, what means of course, stay use case driven and focus on the requirements, but on the other hand, give yourself the chance to explore the potentials and do not only show each other's PowerPoint about the potentials of technology, but get your hands dirty, get your hands on the technology and play around to explore what's in for you. And last but not least, very important to our experience, develop an iterative approach to the topic, so that you do not do the perfect planning, close in for 5 years and then come up with a solution that might not be working, but think about ways on how you can evolve iteratively. And so these are the 3 patterns we do not find, only find within our innovation teams, but also with regard to the interviews we did with several partners for the white papers. That it's always good to keep those 3 patterns in mind when it comes to bring the right ingredients together. Let's take that further. When you have the ingredients, of course, the next thing you have to do with your cooking recipe is thinking about the right tools. And when we speak about innovation, of course, we speak about the supporting framework of methods and behaviors when it comes to the approach. And no, just due to the limited framework, I won't give the lecture about all the nice and agile, innovative approaches that are currently out there in research, but I would give you 2 thoughts. The one is that still sequence matters, so you should develop a way for you on a certain sequence you want to approach things, that you start with a dedicated phase of understanding the requirements, then coming up with hypotheses or things you want to test, and then you go into the iterative mode of developing it and learning. So also when doing iterative things, always keep in mind that you want to develop a certain sequence, that you do not end up in total chaos. While on the other hand, of course, we see that we need to develop methods that put us in a position that we are prepared to get surprised, right? So it's all about developing ways to not only fail cheap, fail fast, as one refers to, but also learn fast. And that's the cool thing, that you have to develop innovation methods that put you in a position to not only test things in the market, but also have a validated learning out of them. When we take that along and ask ourselves, how does the kitchen look like? So what should you keep in mind when it comes to how to organize that kind of innovation, and what conditions you should set up for your innovation teams? We are speaking of the kitchen, so to say. And there's one thing I can recommend to you, and I'm also personally part of one of these, that most of the organization make very good experience with doing or developing some kind of an incubation pattern. So setting up their own incubators, simply due to the fact that it helps you to put the right condition to really bring together the people who think differently and innovative differently. And so you will always have the challenge that you have on the one side the existing business, while on the other side you want to explorate disruptively. So it helps when you bring the right people together and give them kind of an incubative atmosphere they can work with and explore this new world for you. While in the next step, what we learn from ourselves, but also for our customers, stay honest with yourself. So whenever you go into the topic of Industry 4.0, keep in mind that you have hopefully a lasting history and a company DNA you come from. So you won't turn your organization into a software company when you have been working on hardware the last decades. But what you can think about is, how is your core assets, your core competencies, how can they can be transferred to a digitalized world, and what is, when you take an objective and honest view on the topic, what are your fields of action before you end up with having the pink glasses and take a look on the whole new world without really developing a plan that might work out for you. And last but not least, the topic that you create an atmosphere that you also think about how to disrupt yourself. That's a very nice way of approaching the topic, that you think about if you were your own competitor, what you might want to do to disrupt the existing business model, what puts you in a position to take an outside and out of the box perspective and think about on what would be disruptive for your existing business. Might it be due to technology or also due to the business processes you apply nowadays? And so these are the 3 hypotheses we came up with, or we figured out, to keep in mind when you want to change the setting and want to provide the right conditions to drive IoT innovation. While when you leave the borders of just your own company, just your own kitchen, but go to the outside world, then we are speaking about the ecosystem. So what happens when you are at the table? It's not just you, it's also your competitors, your suppliers, your customers in the end. And the thoughts I wanted to share with you there is the first, that we see that the roles are not that stiff anymore, and that also applies to our customers, that we see that by far it's not only having a good customer relation, that the customer is involved in the requirement specification and then leaving us, coming back to us when the product is ready, but that we really ensure that the customer becomes part of product development. So develop processes and methods that the customer is actually part of your development team. And so this is how a customer becomes a partner in the literal sense, that you think about how you can actually open the borders of your product development and product innovation team to the outside world. What of course also applies not only to this very special group of your customers, but also the rest of the ecosystem, that at least at Bosch we are strongly convinced that nobody can do the IoT alone. And beside the fact that there's this nice term of co-opetition, so former suppliers and competitors joining together forces and discussing how that revolution could be shaped together, you end up with the insight that the topic is too big and too fuzzy, as if you could work with closed systems. So it's also good to think about how you could partner partner with the outside world and enter kind of a sparring, that it's not only your engineers who develop the new ideas, but that you stay in a constant mode of sparring with the outside world. And so for that purpose, I also brought along a little case study, bringing along one example how hackathons might be used as an explorative innovation method. And there, if I understood that correctly, I have to ask the guys in the back to start the first movie.
So we are excited to also welcome Peter from Weissar and this high-performance IoT-ready turning machine here at Bosch Connected Experience 2018. That gives us and the participants the great chance to explore the potentials of IoT together.
We joined this micro-test bed together with Bosch and other companies to show what sensors can do in the content of Industry 4.0. We have two examples of Industry 4.0 applications here. One is to make the machine itself better, to help the machine to stabilize it. And the other one is to show how quality assurance can be done during the process itself. Several sensors are there looking at the object and being combined in the same machine, in the sensor integration machine, to make the output valuable for the customer.
I'm very proud to be partner of the open ecosystem, supported also from Bosch, together with other partners, presenting the smart machine bed to the Industry 4.0. What is a smart machine bed? Somebody opens the door and cold wind is coming in. The machine already recognizes this and can adjust according to temperature changes. That means the stability and the precision of the machine always keeps the same. This is done by sensors and actors, which we integrate from our partners to our smart machine beds.
We are very proud to be part of the Bosch Connected World, to experience the spirit of open partnership together with Bosch, SICK, RAM and Weissar, to create together better solutions for our customer. Because for us as sensor supplier, it's important to find new ways to show our customers actually how they can increase OEE and get in touch with the machinery, with predictive maintenance, to ultimately be more competitive in the market.
I guess I skipped the second movie and just take this as an example, just an inspiration for you. Yeah, you saw that we are taking that seriously about speaking about an open ecosystem of partners, and we experienced that hackathons, so inviting all those partners to bring along 4 tons of IoT-ready machinery and a bunch of more IoT-ready technology, putting it on a table and offering them to the outside world, as happened last week in Berlin with 700 participants in the hackathon, is a very nice way to not only explore what is possible in these kind of partnerships, but also to evaluate ideas. Of course, you do not have to do the large hackathon, you can also start small, but it's, as mentioned before, important to get your hands dirty with technology and be open to also outside inspirations. And so, as you saw, I'm a big fan of hackathons, so if you're interested, just step by, because I'm really convinced that that is a very good explorative innovation method. When I skip the next slide, yeah, there we go. Then, so to say, as the point at the end, the decoration, so the soft factors concluding my talk, there the one thing is trust in the young and the wild. I know that's not part of everybody's company culture, so have that shift in mind. That's especially new and fresh eyes that will foster innovation, not necessarily meaning with regard to age, but with regard to the ability to think outside of the box and put together the right team, cross-functional teams, not engineers only, and empower them to drive the innovation, because empowered teams will be the precondition to see successful teams when it comes to drive IoT innovation. I end up with the mission statement of my team being part of a business model innovation team at Bosch. So it's our mission at Bosch to empower the industrial community, shaping that revolution using cutting-edge technology. And with that, I end up. Thanks a lot for your interest, and I'm open for all your questions. For those who want to take a deeper look, feel invited to download the receipt book. It's there and available to you, and of course open to your comments and amendment. Thank you.